perfect storm we had in Denver just last week. You know, we have had so many storms in Denver, and most of them are not at all. But this one was perfect. Now, why do I say it was a perfect storm in Denver? Well, here's the reason. There's I-25, and there's east of I-25 and west of I-25. East of I-25, there was 6 inches of snow, and west of I-25, there was no snow. And I live west of I-25. That was a perfect storm. If they could only all be that way, it would be so great. But they're not. The perfect storm I want to talk about is really based upon something that happened in 1991 to the Andrea Gale. That's the name of a ship that left Gloucester, Massachusetts, and headed for the fishing grounds off of the North Atlantic. 2 weeks later, an event happened and took place that had never before happened in recorded history. And they called the movie about this adventure The Perfect Storm. Any of you here see that movie, The Perfect Storm? Well, some of us have. I really kind of wondered, what in the world are they talking about when they talk about a perfect storm? And so I looked it up. The phrase perfect storm refers to the simultaneous occurrence of events which taken individually would be far less powerful than the results of their chance combination. Now, that's a fancy sentence, which means that the perfect storm was many events happening at the same time. That if they had happened individually, it wouldn't have been so powerful. It wouldn't have been so much chaos and so much turmoil. But when all of those events happened together or simultaneously, it really rocked the boat, so to speak, okay? It really did. And that's what they're talking about. I think we can relate to this, can we not? Because in our lives, we have had chaos, and we've had turmoil. And sometimes we say, if just one or two things would happen at once, I can handle this. But when they all come together, I can't handle it. And that is the absolute truth. As we think about chaos and turmoil, there are 2 thoughts I'd like you to think about this morning. And the first that I'm always reminded of is that out of chaos, God created order. Think about that. In the beginning, God created. And it was out of that chaos that He created it. And if we invite God to bring order into our chaos, He will. And the second thought I would have you think about is that is about Paul's journey and shipwreck on his way to Rome at Malta. Now, I have had the pleasure of being on the island of Malta, and I always ask if anyone in the room has ever been to Malta. Not many people have. Now, every once in a while, someone will come up to me and say, I was a sailor in World War II, and I was in Malta. Malta, well, first of all, when they told me I was going there, I said, I thought they sunk that in World War II. I was thinking of a ship or something like that, but it wasn't a ship at all. What it is a small island off the coast of Italy. And Paul was shipwrecked there. If you read about it in Acts, the 27th and 28th chapter, you'll find quite an interesting story. And Paul handled the chaos and the turmoil of that journey with courage. And perhaps it's just come alive all the more to me because I was there. Now, there are really 3 books that have kind of shaped my thinking about this journey today. And first, the Scriptures, Acts 27 and 28. Second, John MacArthur's book on leadership. And third, there's an article that was written that's probably about 40 pages long called Evidence and Paul's Journey by Jefferson White. And a lot of that paper really has to do with the nautical niceties, maybe we say it that way, that are related to the journey of Paul there. And I'm not sure I understand all of the nautical niceties, the terms, for instance, because but the nautical niceties reinforce the Scripture. And it's kind of interesting to see this from a scriptural perspective and to see it from a nautical perspective as we look at this particular journey. The language in Acts 27 is very rich. The New King James Version of Acts 27:20 says that this was no small tempest. This was no small storm that we're talking about. And he was not kidding. Luke describes this when the wind that took place in verse 27:14. He explains it as Euraquilo or Euroclydon in another version. And that simply meant it was Euro, a north wind, and Aquilo, and let me get that straight. It was Eros, which was an east wind, and Aquilo, which was a north wind. This was a northeaster wind. That's what we're talking about. A big, big wind. And I just wonder, are you facing any big, big winds in your life? If so, this chapter is for you, Acts 27. If we look at Acts 27:4, it says the winds were contrary, or the winds were against us. Tell me this. Do you feel like you're facing into a wind that is against you? You take 2 steps forward and you're blown 3 steps back. If that's the way you feel, then this chapter is for you. Verse 7 says, when the winds did not allow us to hold our course, we sailed towards Crete and sought the harbor of Fair Haven. If you're having difficulty staying on course, this chapter is for you. When the ship reached Fair Havens, it says they halted there. Scripture does not tell us why, but it's interesting that meteorological and nautical evidence tells us why they stopped there. Their halt at Fair Havens was to await a change in the wind. If you're looking for a change in the winds that blow in your life, this chapter is for you. Paul said, stay at Fair Havens. But his advice was ignored and overruled, and they sought a harbor further west. What happened next reminds me of an old saying. And this is one of the great philosophies that came out of my childhood. And it was discovered at Ross's Hamburger Shop, which is right next door to the Denver Citadel Core. And they had 8 stools in there. And this is the wise words of wisdom. Maybe you've heard this before. One day, as I sat musing, sad and lonely, a voice came to me from out of the clear and said, cheer up, things could get worse. So I cheered up, and sure enough, things got worse. Have you ever felt like that? Have you ever had an experience like that? Well, that's what was about to happen. As the ship that Paul was on heading for Rome, he gave advice, stay in Fair Havens. And the captain of the ship did not take that advice. He said, let us sail on further. He would have been wise if he had heeded that advice, but he did not. He did not. From Fair Havens, they had intended to sail to a port called Phoenix, but a storm arose. And hardly has the ill-fated ship put to sea when she is caught by a fierce gale. With difficulty, the lifeboat is drawn aboard. The ship is strengthened by cables and allowed to dive before the wind. The following day, the storm increases, and it seems necessary to cast overboard the freight and all necessary tackle. Then for 14 days and nights, with all bearings lost, without sight of sun or stars, the voyagers are at the mercy of the tempest until all is abandoned. Can you imagine being 14 days where the ship is rocking back and forth? My wife talked about some of the trips we've taken on ships, and just a day or two of up and down and up and down. And we were getting a little green.